Hello, good morning and welcome to our session. Today we'll be doing the most probable questions that may be likely to be asked for the Neet examination from the chapter number 20, namely movement and locomotion. Okay, we'll be going to the questions directly. The first question on the board. Select the true statement. So we are having the multiple statement question where you are given 4 or 5 statements. You have to go through that and select the true. Here it is true. Sometimes it may be false statements. Sometimes there may be more than one true or more than one false statements. You have to select them. Or you may be asked to select the true and false statements like that. The heavy myromyosin component projects as a cross arm from the thick filament. You are having the thick filament. This thick filament is made up of myosin. And we know that each myosin filament is made up of a large number of myromyosins. Myro means unit, a small unit. Myosin is a polymerized structure, and that unit by which it is made up of is called myromyosin. That myromyosin is having a tail. This is made up of light myromyosin chains, and the head as well as the short arm. Head and short arm are made up of heavy myromyosin. This will be constituting the cross arm. Together they are called cross arm. They form the cross arm by which they are all connected to the thin filaments. So you are having thick filament. The head is projecting at regular intervals, at regular angles, and it is by this they are all getting connected with the thin filaments. So thick and thin filaments are getting connected through the cross arm. Clear? So the heavy myromyosin component projects as a cross arm from the thick filament. That's a correct statement. Okay. Now, troponin filament run close to F actins. Troponin filament is running close to the F actins. So you can see troponin is actually a trimer which are all running or which are all placed at regular intervals on tropomyosin. It is a tropomyosin, not troponin. That is why it is wrong. Globular head of myosin has no enzymatic activity. No. In the head, you are having two sites, very important site. One, the site by which it comes in contact with the thin filament. So we call it as actin binding site. And very close to that, there is an ATPase. ATP binding. This ATP binding site is also having ATPase activity. It can break ATP and release energy. So remember, this is a magnesium activated enzymatic property shown by the heavy myromyosin head. Okay. So The globular head of myosin has no enzymatic activity is a wrong statement. It is definitely having an enzymatic activity. ATP binding sites are present on actin. No, they are all present on the head of the heavy myosin. In the resting state, the active binding site on the actin filament for myosin remain exposed. No, they are all concealed by. That's why the head cannot come and get attached with the thin filaments. The head of or cross arm of the thick filament cannot establish connection because these binding sites, each G-actin, G means globular. Each G-actin is having a binding site. It is to that binding site that the actin binding site of the heavy myosin is getting attached. It is concealed by tropomyosin. When the muscle is not at all contracting, it is resting, it is not exposed, it is concealed by the tropomyosin. Clear? So, in the resting state, the active binding site on the active filaments are completely remaining concealed. They are not at all exposed. So, that point is also wrong. So, only apple is the correct one. Clear? In the following statement relate to the role of calcium in the contraction of skeletal muscle. What is incorrect? See, we need two ions in muscle contraction. One is calcium. This calcium is having two roles. It is the calcium that comes and binds with the troponin subunit, so that this binding site, which are all remaining concealed or masked or exposed to this calcium, will also activate ATP, so that ATP will be coming and binding with the ATP binding site. The sarcoplasmic reticulum, that is the endoplasmic reticulum of the muscle, act as the storehouse of calcium. It is forming what is called a triad system or T system. It is usually made up of two vesicles and one cisterna, and may be lying almost like a letter T. Since it is made up of three components, 1, 2 and 3, it is called triad system. And since it is lying in the form of letter T, it is called T system. That is why it is called T system. This is acting as, this is a modified sarcoplasmic reticulum. This is acting as the storehouse of calcium. So, sarcoplasmic reticulum acts as the storehouse. Calcium entry across the plasma membrane is important in sustaining the contraction of skeletal muscles. When the calcium is withdrawn back into the T system, see, when a signal comes, a motor impulse comes, calcium is actively pumped out. That causes contraction, and when the calcium is withdrawn, contraction stops. Okay. So, calcium entry across the plasma membrane is important in sustaining the contraction. Correct. A rise in intracellular calcium allows actin to interact with myosin. This is the reason. Because of the calcium, they will be activated. So, that will be increasing the concentration of calcium within the muscle cell. Intracellular calcium means calcium level within the cell, muscle cell. Calcium is necessary for crossbridge to move. Calcium binds with tropomyosin. No, it is combined with the troponin. Remember, troponin is a trimer. It is having 3 subunits. We can say that TT, TC and TI. TT is that part by which, or component by which, a troponin comes in contact with the tropomyosin. TC, C for calcium. It is to the side that calcium will be coming and binding. And remember, one TC can bind with a maximum of 4 calcium ions. First one come, then second, third and fourth. So maximum 4 ions of calcium can come and bind with the TC subunit. And TI, I for inhibitor. This is the factor or unit that is responsible for suppressing, concealing the covering of the binding site in the G-actin molecules. Okay, so this is the nature of a troponin. Clear? Troponin. See, we are having, that is why they are all shown as 3 globular structures. It is a trimer having 3 subunits. Clear? Now, incorrect match. What are the bones which are all present in the cranial part and facial part? We have studied that there are total of 22 bones in the skull, of which cranium 8, we will be having 8 and 14 in the facial part. Cranial bones, sphenoid and ethmoid, that's correct. Now, zygomatic, the large bone, zygomatic and vomer single one, they are part of the facial bones. That's correct. Maxilla, maxilla is the upper jaw bone. It is not a part of the cranial, it is part of the facial. So, this we can omit. Inferior nasal conchae, they are also called turbinal, small bones present in the nasal passage. It is called turbinals. So, it is part of the facial, not cranial. Frontal, that's correct. Inferior nasal conchae, again that is incorrect. Conchae is not a part of the cranial bones. Palatine, palatine is a part of the facial part. Okay, so we know that all others are wrong and only A is the correct. Though the names of the bones are not in the NCERT book, you have to study it. What are the bones that are all present in them? And again, understand that in the cranial part of the 8 bones, only 2 bones are paired. They are the parietals and temporals. Okay, only 2 are paired. Whereas of the 14 bones, the facial, only 2 are unpaired. A vomer and the mandible lower jaw. All others are paired. Here only 2 are paired. Here only 2 are unpaired. That is single. All others are paired here. Okay. Which incorrect matching for number of bones present in adult human? Cranium, correct. I told you. Facial bones, 14, correct. So together 22 in the cranium and the skull. Vertebral column, 33 are present in the vertebral column of infants, only in the developing stages. Okay, whereas the bones of the sacrum and coccyx completely fuse. That's why we have to write the formula in bracket. We have cervical, 7. That's a characteristic nature of mammals, but 4 genera are having a different number, atypical cervical number. Generally, we are having 7 in man, also 7 cervical, thoracic, 12 pairs, lumbar, 5. Okay. Now, they will be completely fused. And to show that they are all fused to form a single piece in adult, we will put it in bracket. That is the typical and correct formula of our vertebral column. Okay. So, it is not 33. It is in developing stages. In adult human, it is 26. That is why the total number of bones in the adult man is only 206. It is only 206, not as we calculated 213. Okay. So, there is a reduction in the number of bones because of the fusion of vertebrae in the sacrum. The 5 are fused, and coccyx, they are also fused, 4 are fused to form a single piece. This is the reason why there is a difference in the number of vertebrae in fetus and adult, and that is the reason why there is a difference in number of vertebrae, number of bones in adult man and in fetus. Clear? Ear ossicles, 3 each, hyoid apparatus, single, correct. Now, pectoral girdle. What are the bones of the pectoral girdle? Our pectoral girdle is having a pair of clavicles and scapula. So, 3 and 5. A will be 3 and 5. And pelvic girdle is made up of a coxa bone on either side. But remember that coxa is an os innominatum, which you cannot separate. It is a single bone formed by the fusion of 3 bones. What are they? Ilium, ischium, and pubis. So, ilium, ischium, and pubis. So, the option is doll. Correct statement. At the point of fusion of ilium, ischium, and pubis bones, a cavity called acetabulum is present. Correct. I am giving you only rough diagrammatic versions. Okay. This is the sacrum. You are having the ilia. See? Large wing legs such as ileum. I-L-I-U-M spelling. I-L-E-U-M is part of the intestine. So, ileum. Okay. These ilia are connected to either side of the sacrum, completely fused. That's how the hip joint is formed. And at the point of contact between or junction where these 3 bones are connected together, there's a depression. It is to that depression that the head of the femur bone is attached. This is the hip joint. Hip joint. Okay. So now come to the, at the point of fusion of ilium, ischium, and pubis bones, a cavity called acetabulum is present. Okay. Proximal head of humerus. Humerus is the bone of humerus, the brachium or upper arm. Articulates with acetabulum. No, acetabulum is the hip joint, and this is the glenoid cavity. The depression which is present in the scapula. Here, there's a depression. Okay, that depression is called, you are having a spine, etc. All structures are there. I'm not going to the details. This is the glenoid cavity. This glenoid cavity is the depression to which the head of the humerus bone is attached. That is forming the shoulder joint. Okay, so that also forms the two ball and socket joints. So one is correct, two is wrong. Then, two halves of the pelvic girdle meet ventrally to form the pubic symphysis. See, the pubis of either side are meeting ventrally and it will form a symphysis. What is a symphysis? Symphysis is the structure formed by the fusion of same bone of either side, the right and the left pubis joint, and there is a cartilage. It's a cartilaginous joint. This is called pubic symphysis. What is the pubic symphysis? Will be supported the lower part of the abdomen, urinary bladder, etc., etc. Okay, and this will be allowing some degree of movement during childbirth in females. Okay, so this is the cartilaginous piece by which the two bones, the pubis of either side, are all connected together ventrally. That point is correct. Glenoid cavity is located below acromion. What is acromion? Acromion is in the pectoral girdle, the scapula, that flat bone is having triangle shaped bone, is having a spine. That spine will be ending in a flat structure called acromion. The clavicle, which is commonly called as the shoulder bone, will be connected to acromion, and glenoid cavity is just below that. Clear? So, glenoid cavity is located below acromion. Correct. Clavicle articulates with acromion process. Again, correct. So, you are having the clavicle connected with the acromion. Acromion is the flat part at which the spine will be ending, and the glenoid cavity is lying just below. Clear? Incorrect statement. H zone contains only thin filaments. See, H zone is that part you are having A band. What is A band? Dark band. Okay, this is the dark band. From this part to this part is A band. In the middle of the dark band, there is a region where there is no overlapping of thin filaments. That part is somewhat transparent than that of the other extreme ends of the A band. This part which is not overlapped is called edge zone, Henson zone or edge zone. So edge zone is comparatively paler or lighter than the other ends of the A band. So edge zone contains only thin filaments. Oh, no. It is containing only thick. A band contains only myosin. No, A band is having myosin which is slightly overlapped. Even if the muscle is fully relaxed, there is some degree of overlapping. Some degree of overlapping is always there. Okay. You are having only a part of the end of the thin filament overlapping. So, A band contains only myosin is again wrong. Light muromyosin comes in direct contact with the thin filament. No, light muromyosin is the tail. They are all present in the thickness of that fiber. They are all present within the thickness of that thick fiber. And the head that is projecting out at regular interval, that is made up of heavy muromyosin, so it is not light. Troponin is the globular protein masking active sites on F actin. It is tropomyosin which is arranged end to end, which is covering the active sites. So all of them are wrong. 1, 2, 3 and 4 are wrong. So choose the incorrect statement. All of them are incorrect. All of them are true means all of them are incorrect. Here it is incorrect. Okay. Biceps and triceps muscles are respectively. What is biceps? Remember, skeletal muscles are working in pairs. They are all doing opposite actions. They are all responsible for the movement of the bone. So if one set of muscle bring one type of movement, another set of muscle will be definitely bringing the opposite type of movement. That is how they are all arranged. Clear? So we are having skeletal muscles in the form of pairs which are all doing the opposite type of actions. Now, biceps and triceps are attached to this biceps is, when this muscle contracts, you can see it. It is flexor, bending. Flexion means bending. And what is extensor? The opposite. When this muscle contracts, our arms are extended. So biceps and triceps are typical example for flexor and extensor. This part is not in our books. Adductor. What is adductor? Which is responsible for keeping our limbs close to the median line. Adductor muscle is latissimus dorsi. Latissimus dorsi. And the deltoid is helping this muscle. That is helping. When this muscle contracts, we stretch our arms. So that is adductor, opposite of abductor. Adductor is abductor. Adductor which is helping in closing. Abductor which is responsible for extending, keeping the limbs away from the median line. That is for opening. So latissimus dorsi, adductor, and deltoides, abductor. Then pronator, supinator. What is pronator? See, primates are having an ability to rotate like this part. That's why we are all capable of using arms, using tools actually. We are all capable of using tools. Tool using abilities because of this type of movement. We can twist, primates are having. It is because of certain sets of muscles We are having bones also, a pair of bones which are all overlappingly arranged, radius and ulna, and we are having two positions. When we stand normally, the palm will be inward, and when we extend our arms, the palm is downwards. This is called pronation. It is with the help of a set of muscles called pronator teres, T-E-R-E-S, pronator teres. And the opposite is supinator, where the palm is directed upward or directed outward. This position is called supinator with the help of the supinator muscle. So, pronator teres and supinator muscles are typical examples for them. Then, elevator depressor. We are all elevating, pulling the lower jaw upward, that is with the help of masseter muscles, one of the most powerful muscles of our body. It is masseter muscles. It is elevating. The other muscle is depressor mandibulae, which is responsible for lowering of the lower jaw. So, elevation of the elevation of the lower jaw and lowering of the lower jaw are with the help of masseter muscles and depressor mandibulae muscles. They are typical example for elevator and depressor. Sphincter and dilator. See, for regulating the flow of food, we have studied esophageal ring, which is correctly called gastroesophageal sphincter, iliocolonic sphincter, pyloric sphincter. So, these sphincters are having two sets of muscles. One set, circular muscle, when they contract, the opening will be narrowing, closing. And when the dilator muscles contract, they will be increasing the diameter. Okay. Similar is the condition in iris. But this is not a skeletal muscle. It is an involuntary muscle. We are having the pyloric muscles, radial muscles, which are all contracting so that the opening will be reduced. That is called sphincter. Okay. The opposite muscles, which are all usually radial muscles, are the dilator muscles. So these are some of the types of movements shown by the muscles or movements brought about by the movements of the muscles. Skeletal muscles are in pairs. Vertebral formula, we have studied it. T7, T12, L5, lumbar, sacral 5. Why we are putting it in bracket? They are all fused. Okay, this is adult man and it is C for coccygeal. We have studied it. Now, which of the following is the correct description of certain parts of normal human skeleton? Parietal bone and temporal bones of the skull are joined by fibrous joint. What is a fibrous joint? A joint where the two flat bones are connected together by fibrous tissue, which will be allowing no movement at all. Okay, synarthrosis, immovably joined. All bones of the cranium are immovably connected together. Parietal bones and temporal bones. Okay, so parietal and temporal bones. You are having no movement possible because they are connected by fibrous tissues in between. First vertebrae is atlas, not axis. So that's a wrong one. 9th and 10th pairs of ribs are called floating ribs. No, floating ribs are the 11th and 12th pairs. 8th, 9th and 10th are called vertebrochondral. We will be coming to the same question in the last, in another form, in the last one. Okay, I will again with the help of the diagram explain what are the true ribs, floating ribs, etc. there. Glenoid cavity is a depression to which the thigh bones never, it is the humerus that is attached. Joint between adjacent vertebrae are synovial. Synovial joints are freely moving. No, it is cartilaginous. Neighboring vertebrae, see, in our case, neighboring vertebrae are connected together by intervertebral disc. This intervertebral disc is allowing some degree of movement. So it is slightly movable. Cartilaginous joints. So that is also wrong. Cartilaginous joints are also called by name amphiarthrosis. Okay. Synovial joints are freely movable, whereas amphiarthrosis are slightly movable joints. Sliding filament theory can be explained. That is the theory explained to the mechanism of muscle contraction. A.F. Huxley and H.E. Huxley and Hansen, they have explained the mechanism of contraction. According to them, during contraction of a muscle fiber, there is no shortening of any filament, but the thin filament is sliding in between the thick filaments. That is why the two Z lines are coming closer and closer. And after contraction, they are all coming back to their original position. So there is no shortening of thick filament or thin filament. Thin filaments are sliding past in between the thick filaments. So actin and myosin filaments do not shorten. Their length is not reduced, but rather slide past. That's the correct one, but we will wait for the other options also. When myofilaments slide past each other, myosin filaments shorten. No, there is no shortening of any. When myofilaments slide past each other, actin filaments shorten. No, there is no shortening of any filament. That is the most important point we have to remember. Actin and myosin filaments are shortening. There is no shortening. Instead, see, originally, if this was the condition, this is the condition. This is the Z line, and say for example, this is Z line. The thin filament is pulled more and more close, so that see, the two Z lines are coming close together. So the overall length of the sarcomere is that part which is in between two adjacent Z lines. That is very much reduced. So during contraction, there is no change for A band. I band is becoming shorter and shorter. H zone is becoming smaller and smaller, finally disappear. And the two Z lines are coming closer and closer. There is no shortening of thick or thin filaments. Okay. Instead, the thin filaments are sliding in between. That is why this theory is called sliding filament theory, put forward by Huxley and Huxley. Yes, you can see it. This is the thick filament and this is the thin filament. Read the statement regarding myofibril and choose the correct. Each myofibril has alternate light and dark bands present within a skeletal muscle fiber. You are having parallelly arranged myofibrils, okay, or myofilaments. Each myofilament is having alternate dark and white bands. In the center of each A band, see, this is the A band. In the center of that each band is an elastic fiber called Z line. No, Z line is present in the middle of the I band. Okay, it is in the middle of the I band. So it is wrong. A and I bands are arranged. A is dark band or thick, I is white. Are arranged alternately throughout the length of the myofibril. Correct. Sarcomere is the functional as well as structural unit. Functional and structural unit of contraction, muscle fiber. The central part of thick filament not overlapped by, see, this is the A band, and you are having the thin filaments also. That thin filaments are overlapping, but in the middle there is no overlapping. That part which is not overlapped by thin filament is called the H zone. So this is also wrong. So 1, 2 is wrong, 3, 4. That's why the option is elephant. In the resting stage, edges of thin filament on either side of the thick filament dash slightly overlap or partially overlap the free ends of the thick filament. Okay, we have seen it. When the muscle is in a fully relaxed condition, this is the A band. In the central part, there is no overlapping. This forms H zone. Okay. The free ends of the thick filament, leaving the central part of the thick filament. This central part of thick filament not overlapped by the thin filament is called H zone. Okay. So the option should be partly or slightly overlapping, slightly or partially overlapping. It is not completely overlapping, partially at the end of the thick filament. So the option goes to cat. Okay, you can see here. This part which is not overlap is representing the H zone. Clear? Chemical ions responsible for muscle contraction. There are two ions which are very, very important. There are calcium and the other one is magnesium. Calcium is for the activation, for unmasking the binding sites, and magnesium is the ATPase activation. ATPase enzyme will be working. It is enzymatically split into ADP and P. So for that ATPase is magnesium activated, and calcium unmasks the binding sites on actin. Statement about the mechanism of muscle contraction. Acetylcholine released when the neural signal reach a motor end plate. What is a motor end plate? For a muscle contraction, we need a motor nerve that will be bringing the signals and a muscle fiber. This is called a motor unit. Okay. Actually, it's a neuromyonal junction. It's a neuromyonal junction. A motor neuron. This is the motor neuron. Brings signals from the central nervous system, and this is the muscle fiber. Okay. This is the neuromyonal junction or motor unit. This is also called, this junction is called end plate. Okay. Acetylcholine is released. When that signal reaches here, the neurotransmitters are released, and that neurotransmitter will be accepted by the receptors present on the membrane of the muscle fiber. And here the chemical neurotransmitter will be acetylcholine. Correct. Okay. Muscle contraction is initiated by a signal sent by central nervous system via sensory. No, it is motor. Always signals are coming through efferent. It is also called efferent or motor neuron. During muscle contraction, isotropic, I band. Isotropic means I band. I band means white band. Get elongated. It is becoming shorter and shorter, completely disappearing. Repeated activation of the muscle can lead to accumulation of lactic acid, that is leading to fatigue, a condition called fatigue. Correct. So we are having only 1 and 4 correct. All others are wrong. So we go to the option apple. Incorrect difference. Red muscles. There are slow twitch muscles. Correct. Rich in myoglobin, that's why they are all red in color. The pigment is abundant. Plenty of sarcoplasmic reticulum. See, they are all having abundant of mitochondria and poor sarcoplasmic reticulum. So that is wrong. Plenty of mitochondria, that is correct. Okay. They are all aerobic. They are all having large amount of pigment so they can store oxygen, and also they are having plenty of mitochondria, so they are all aerobic. So here it is aerobic, no, it is anaerobic, and few sarcoplasmic reticulum is wrong. Here abundant of sarcoplasmic reticulum and few mitochondria, that is correct. This is wrong. So 3 and 5 are wrong. Okay, remember the red muscles are slow twitch muscles. They will be fatiguing, or they will not be actually fatigued. Okay, slow fatigued muscles, whereas the fast twitch muscles will be easily getting fatigued. Then correct option. Fibrous joint. What is a fibrous joint? The two bones are connected together by a connective tissue, fibrous connective tissue. It is immovable. It is also called synarthrosis. So, where we have studied, it is between the bones of the skull, so that they will be having sutures, that line, irregular line that demarks the two bones. They cannot be. So, one is for. Immediately we came to the answer because there is only one option where A is 4. Then what is cartilaginous joints? Slightly movable in intervertebral disc. We are having fibrous cartilages in between the two vertebrae. So it is intervertebral disc, which is a typical example for the cartilaginous joint, which is also called amphiarthrosis. Hinge joint. Just like a hinge, they are all moving only in one side. It is monaxial. They are called monaxial. They will be moving in one side. Where? Knee joint, elbow joint, etc. And also the joints between the phalange. Saddle joint. The joint which is almost similar to, not exactly, it is not as mobile as our ball and socket. The joint between the first digit and the first metacarpus. So saddle, it is between carpal and metacarpal of the thumb. Pivotal. What is pivot? There is a stump and a ringlet structure which fit into that, so that it can rotate, rotatory movement. Okay, this is the atlas and axis. That is why we are having no movement possible. Okay, no movement. This movement is called no movement, and this movement is the yes movement. Okay, so 1 between atlas and axis. So option is box. muscular dystrophy. We know that this muscular dystrophy is a genetic disorder because of the gene mutation. Dystrophin gene, one of the largest gene in the body, when it is undergoing mutation, no dystrophin is produced. So that will be leading to progressive degeneration of the skeletal muscle. So genetic disorder for which there is no remedy. Duchenne muscular dystrophy, DMD, we can call it gout. Gout is because of the deposit of uric acid extra. There is a anomaly in the metabolism and there will be more uric acid produced than our body can send out, and that will lead to accumulation of this uric acid in joints. That is called gouty arthritis or gout. Myasthenia gravis. Myasthenia gravis is a autoimmune disease. Okay, our own antibodies are all attacking our synovial joints, especially the knee, elbow, etc., and will be causing the disorder where the receptors are all destroyed and our muscle will not be responding to the neural signal, and it is an autoimmune disorder at the neuromyonal. What is osteoporosis? Pores in the osteobones. Why? Because the bones are normally filled with fibers, calcium salts, etc. When these calcium salts deposited in the bone are all removed, that is called demineralization or resorption. Bones become very weak, the density of the bones become very less, and they become easily vulnerable to breaking. It is called osteoporosis, mainly because of a low level of estrogen. Okay, and tetany. It is hypocalcemic tetany. When the calcium level in the blood decreases below 7 milligram, so you will be having 7 to 10. If it comes down to 6 or even below, the muscles will be undergoing irregular, uncontrolled spasms. That is what is called tetany. We can also call it as hypocalcemic tetany because of the low level of calcium in the blood. That is called tetany. So rapid spasm. Spasm means irregular, involuntary contractions due to low calcium level in the body fluids. Clear? Which of the following is not a function of skeletal system? Skeletal system is responsible for movement. We are having three systems: muscular system, skeletal system, and the nervous system controlling the locomotion. Production of erythrocytes. Red bone marrow is responsible for the production of all different types of blood cells. Storage of minerals. They store calcium. They act as a storehouse of calcium, phosphates, etc., calcium carbonate, calcium phosphates, etc., stored in them. And production of body heat. It is not at all a function of our skeletal system. Muscles, liver, etc., are mainly responsible for the production of heat in our body. Muscle contraction. When energy is utilized, some amount of energy is coming out in the form of heat. Which of the following joints would allow no movement? No movement. It is fibrous joint, also called as synarthrosis. It is also called synarthrosis. Okay, fibrous joints. As in the case of the sutures, in the skull bones, they are all completely. Ball and socket joint, it is freely movable, maximum movement, degree of movement in having movement in free plane. Okay. Cartilaginous joint, slightly movable. It is called amphiarthrosis. Ball and socket and synovial, it is also a synovial. What is synovial? Which allows maximum degree of movement or free movement. That's called synovial joint, which is also called freely movable joints or diarthrosis. So this is diarthrosis. Arthros means joints. Fibrous joint is synarthrosis. And cartilaginous joints are amphiarthrosis. Okay. and smooth muscles. What is the nature of the smooth muscles? These are all the questions that are asked in the previous examinations. They are all involuntary. They are not cylindrical. They are spindle shaped or fusiform. Okay. So, this is not correct. They are voluntary. It is not correct. They are involuntary, fusiform, non-striated or unstriped. Correct. They are voluntary. No. They are all involuntary. Name the ion responsible for unmasking of the active sites. We have discussed these things for myosin, for cross-bridge activity during muscle contraction. It is calcium. See, calcium is released from T system, which is a modification of endoplasmic reticulum. It will activate ATP. Now ATP will be binding with the ATP binding site on the head of meromyosins. This calcium will be also getting attached with the TC subunit of the troponin, and that will be helping in unmasking the binding site of actin. That is the role of calcium. Okay. Osteoporosis. Just now I told you what is osteoporosis. The age-related disease of skeletal system may occur due to decreased level of estrogen. So, calcium which are all deposited are all removed so that what places or what positions the calcium were occupying on the bone become fibroid. They become very thin, less density, and that condition is called osteoporosis, weakening of bones. The pivot joint between atlas and axis. This is the pivot joint. Okay. A stump odontoid process arising from the second vertebra axis and the atlas. The atlas is having two facets to which the occipital condyles are all fitting. That site of attachment is responsible for S movement, and no movement is because of the pivot joint between atlas and axis. These are all synovial joints. See, synovial joints are all free movable joints. They may be of different categories. Ball and socket joints, saddle joints, pivot joints. Okay. We are having the hinge joints. All of them are belonging to this type of synovial joint where there is a synovial fluid between the two bones. Again, this is a question regarding the ribs. I have told you that there are more questions coming. This is the diagram I was telling you. The first 7 are connected to the sternum. So they are called true ribs. Okay. They are all costa. Vertebrosternal. They are also called vertebrosternal. 8th, 9th and 10th are false ribs because they are all connected to the cartilage of the 7th. They are not directly connected but are connected indirectly through the cartilage of the 7th. So they are called vertebrochondral. 11th and 12th pairs are the shortest ones which are not at all connected ventrally. They are called floating. Okay. So this is the one which we have to remember. XY pairs for true ribs. Y for true ribs. True ribs are, the total number is 12, of which true ribs are 7. True ribs are attached dorsally to the vertebral column, that is vertebrae, and ventrally to the sternum. Okay. First to 7, true, they are also called direct or vertebrosternal. 8th, 9th, 10th pairs are false, indirect or vertebrochondral because they are connected to the cartilage of the 7th. 11th and 12th are called floating ribs or vertebral ribs because they are connected only to the vertebra dorsally. Which of the following hormones can play a significant role in osteoporosis? See, osteoporosis is a condition where bones are losing their density because the calcium are removed mainly because of the shortage of estrogen and parathyroid hormone. What is the role of parathyroid? See, low level of estrogen and PTH are the reason. PTH hypersecretion. PTH is parathormone or colic hormone which is hypercalcemic in nature. Increases the calcium level in blood. How it increases the calcium level? By taking all the calcium deposited in the bones. So bones become weak. Okay. So if there is excess secretion of the colic hormone or PTH, that will be causing resorption because they activate osteoclast cells. So all the calcium deposited in the bones will be reabsorbed. So hypersecretion of colic hormone cause more resorption of calcium, demineralization or resorption from bones, that is increasing the calcium level in blood. It is, I told you, hypercalcemic in nature, causing weakening of the bones. That is why estrogen and parathyroid are playing. Progesterone and aldosterone, they are having no role in calcium metabolism. Calcium is important in skeletal muscles contraction. Why? Why it is important? Because I told you calcium is binding to troponin to remove the masking site on the actin for myosin. That's the main function. Which of the following muscular disorder is inherited? Meaning because of a genetical. Okay, so having a genetical basis, it is muscular dystrophy. The dystrophin gene is mutated. Myasthenia gravis is a autoimmune. Our own antibodies are all attacking our own neuromotor junctions. Botulism, it is because of an infection of bacteria. Clostridium botulinum, that causes botulism. And tetany. Tetany is hypocalcemic tetany. Low level of calcium will be causing irregular spasms. That's called tetany. And coming to the last question from this chapter, as I told you, select the correct option. 11th and 12th pairs of ribs are connected to the sternum. No, they are all floating ribs. Each rib is a flat thin bone, correct? And all the ribs are connected dorsally to the thoracic vertebrae. That is correct. Ventrally to the sternum. No, only the first 7 are connected to the sternum ventrally. There are 7 pairs of vertebrosternal, that is connected to the vertebra dorsally, sternum ventrally. 3 pairs of vertebracontral, vertebra dorsally to the contra means cartilage of the 7th, correct. And 2 pairs of vertebral ribs, that is floating ribs. That is the correct statement. 8th, 9th and 10th pairs of ribs articulate directly with the sternum, no, indirectly to the sternum through the cartilage of the 7th. They are called false or indirect. Okay. So only 3 is the correct. I hope almost all concept from this chapter is now thorough to you. Okay. So thank you all, and we will meet with another set of questions from the next chapter. Once again, thank you. Thank you very much.